All right, my clock says that it's 7 o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this going here. I've got the recording going, and we're just gonna go through this here tonight. So today is February 9th, and we are doing our free question and answer that we try to do every Thursday night. Tonight's subject is details about the 17-week course that I teach during the growing season in the summertime. This picture on the left is me with Tim and Jessica. They were my students last year. Last year was the first time I've taught this course. I have been teaching gardening courses for almost 20 years. And over that time, I have learned that we have a shortage of farmers. We just don't have enough people in food production. And what that means is that when we go to the grocery store, we are cheated because the grocery store doesn't have that many options of good food to eat. You know, there's all kinds of food there, and we can get plenty of food to eat normally. I mean, if we have the money to buy it. But there are so many different kinds of foods that could be grown. And a lot of avid gardeners grow different kinds of things and a lot of the great fun varieties, and they're simply not available at a store. So I got to thinking, we need to train more people to be farmers. And I'm turning 50 years old this year. And I was thinking that if I have another 50 years left, which I hope I do, then I would like to spend that time leaving a legacy of training people on how to grow food in the most healthy way and in the most profitable way. Because a lot of times farmers don't make a lot of money. Their profit margins are super short. And that causes financial problems. That causes relationship problems. It causes, obviously, just like financial things. You can't pay for stuff that you need for your family. And I don't think that farms should take most of the money just to keep them running. The farms should be making us money. We should be able to create wealth with our farms. So that's what I'm focused on, is trying to teach people how to save money by doing farming in an ecological way. And there are several ways that I do that to help people. And here they are. I try to show this every week so the people who see this on YouTube, if they only watch one video, they always see this. But if you go to my website on the bottom of the screen here, georgicrevolution.com, you can get all this information. But I do have a YouTube channel, and these free weekly Q&As that I do, which is what tonight is, it will be on YouTube. And then I have my Patreon account, and I put videos and articles on there, and there's more than 500 of them on there right now. And so that's a subscription. It's $8 a month, and you can have access to all of that. If you want more mentoring, you can pay more money on the Patreon, and there are different levels so that you can hire me to do more work for you so that you can have the best garden in the world. And then the 17-week farmer class is there, number 4 on this list. And that is what we're going to be talking about tonight. So I'm going to go into details a little bit about that. And number 5, I'm a soil laboratory, and I do soil tests. I've been looking at some soil samples recently, and it's been fun to see what different kinds of soils people have. And once in a while, I'll even do a compost test for people. I mean, I do my own all the time, but it's fun when people send me a compost sample, because that's how we fix the bad soils, is by having a good compost so that we can introduce the good microbes to the soil that when our soils aren't working. And then number 6, I'm available for consulting. So I do consulting to help people grow food. And boot camp is a big deal. And we already have people starting to sign up for my spring boot camp that's coming up. I'm pretty sure that's the last weekend in April. And then my book, I've been telling people for weeks that my manuscript is done, and we're simply waiting. We're in the publishing and editing process. I'm so excited tonight to tell you that I finished the edits yesterday. I went completely through the book for probably the 10th time. I don't know. It's been a lot of work, but I went through I got done yesterday, and my wife is going to get she does graphic art stuff on computers, so she's gonna put it all together so that we can send it off and get it published. So that is like a gigantic, huge deal for me. So I'm so excited. I don't know how to express my excitement, so let's just move on. So in our 17-week course, these are the people that are here for the 17 weeks. So Jared and Selena are over here on the left side of the screen, sitting in front of the fireplace. They own the ranch here. They are the owners of the ranch where we do this. And I live on this ranch, and they have two different ranches. They have one on the east side of the Humboldt Mountains, and they have one in the middle of the Humboldt Mountains. And so it takes an hour or so to drive from one ranch to the other. So I am on the east side in Clover Valley for the entire year. 365 days I am here, obviously, unless I drive somewhere to do something else. But usually I'm here. And so I take care of this side of the ranch. I manage the irrigation and movement of cattle and the growing of fruits and vegetables and the greenhouse. So I do all of that work, and I teach classes here. And so all of the educational programs that I do are my personal business. And then I am a manager working for Jared Sorensen here on his ranch. This is probably the dream job that, for me anyway. I mean, if everybody had the same dream job, that'd be bad, but this is perfect and I love it. So on the right, this is a picture of me and my wife, and we are here, and I do most of the teaching for the 17-week course. Once in a while, Bernie teaches things. We even had my daughter teach one class last year because she is an expert at the subject that she taught that day. And then Jared teaches a few things once in a while because he's completely brilliant, and so we certainly include him whenever we can. Okay, so there's these 17 things right here that we focus on in our 17-week class. So we're just going to fly through these, and then I have a whole bunch of fun pictures to show you of how the 17-week class works. No, this is not just an advertisement about me selling my class. I obviously need to sell these classes, but the reason I'm doing this tonight is because as we go through this, I think it's really beneficial for people to learn and understand what we're looking at and how we do this. And it can certainly help you in your gardens just to know this information. And if you need to know more and deeper, then there are other ways you can interact with us with the other classes that we do. Come to boot camp, come to this class. And of course, there's all the online teaching that's happening on the Patreon. So number one, the daily week is 5 days a week. Saturdays and Sundays are off. You can go home, you can do whatever, you can stay here, whatever. But Saturdays and Sundays, we don't have a formal class. 5 to 6 hours of class is hands-on outside in the gardens and in the laboratory doing soil work. And then 1 to 3 hours is classroom time. We usually do that in the hottest part of the day, from noon to 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we come in the house, and I have a whole bunch of stuff on the computer that we go through. We go through a whole bunch of PowerPoint presentations, and we learn together the following things. And the first thing we want to learn is what makes a functioning soil. And in order to understand that, we need to know what destroys a functioning soil. And then we go into great detail on the 4 ecosystem processes, how the sunlight powers everything, and how we can take advantage of that to become more profitable on our farms by growing a multitude of crops instead of just a monocrop. And then we but I mean, we go into all 4 of those a lot. And the entire 17 weeks, we are talking about those 4 ecosystem processes and what we can do to make those work for us on our land. And then we focus on the 7 soil health principles. Those are very important because those are the 7 things that we actually do. You can't go out and sunlight. You can't go out and photosynthesize. Plants can, but people can't. So we can't go create the ecosystem processes per se or do them, but we can do the 7 principles that will make the 4 ecosystem processes work really well in whatever environment we have, we interact with. And then there's the 4 key insights of Alan Savory. We learn those. There's the 5 spheres of the soil. The main reason we need to know the 5 spheres of the soil is that is how we learn whether the 4 ecosystem processes are working. So we learn in the laboratory and outside with the shovel, we're digging around, and we get to know, we become very familiar with those 5 spheres. There's actually 6 spheres of the soil. The phylosphere is a brand new, they just added that this year in the last 12 months. Ray Archuleta, he's one of the great soil scientists of our time, and he added the phylosphere. So I need to update this slide. But by understanding those spheres, so that when we walk out into the field and we can tell if those spheres are there, are they functioning? If the answer is yes, great. If not, then we need to go back to the 7 soil health principles and start doing one of the principles so that the 4 ecosystems processes work and will create those 5 spheres. And then there's the 7 layers of plants, which is just as important as everything else I just was ranting and raving about. We go into the what a healthy plant attribute is. Most people don't really know what a healthy plant looks like because most people in agriculture have not been around healthy plants. We're usually around stressed plants. So what are the actual attributes of a healthy plant? Another way to say that is, are your plants, are they actually, are they reaching their genetic capacity? Are they doing what they were designed to do on your farm? Are you profitable on your farm? Because if you're not regenerative, if you're not profitable, it's not working if there's no profitability there. And so many of the farms across the nation and the world have not been profitable with the doing gardening and farming with the green revolution work. We've struggled to be profitable. We really focus on number 12, which is reversing desertification. What this means is you could go purchase the poorest piece of land out there, and by doing the things we teach you in these 17 weeks, you could make that a Garden of Eden in a period of time. Now, if you have toxins in the land, let's say you bought 20 acres on the salt flats, it's probably going to take longer. I don't know if you could ever get that soil to produce. So we're not talking about the extremes, but we are talking about normal places where a plant will grow, but they're simply not growing. So we can create beautiful places in degraded soil. So that is one of the main things we learned during this class. And of course, we want to be able to produce food for 365 days a year. And we want to have nutritious food. I believe there's a nutrition crisis in our world today. So we focus on creating the most nutrition in our food. And we want to have abundant harvests to feed the population. I think it'll be interesting to see in the next 100 years what happens with human population on the earth. But our entire lives, we've been told that, the earth is overpopulated. But now there are indicators that the demographers, is that a word? A person who studies demographics is what I'm trying to say. But they are telling us that not enough people are having enough kids. And within the next 100 years, we are going to see that in order to maintain the level of the, what is it called, quality of life that we enjoy now. We need more of a population to be able to do that. So that's an interesting, just an interesting demographic about the world population. But anyway, can we feed the world population? Yes, we certainly can with the things that we teach. And of course, I mentioned this earlier, but I do believe we have a farmer shortage, not a food shortage in the world. And we talk a lot about the worldviews and the attitudes towards agriculture and why we have people who think that, like, they think that agriculture is not a real profession for their kids. I mean, we've been telling our kids forever, become doctors and lawyers. Willie Nelson wrote a song about it. I won't sing it though. In the first week, when you come to the 17-week class, the very first day, what I do is I take the students, we walk outside, and I assign you a personal garden. And it'll be your garden that you take care of outside of class time. And we're going to take a soil test from that garden. We're going to do the microscopy work, and meaning we look at the soil under the microscope. We are going to find out which organisms are missing. And then we're going to go to my awesome compost pile, and we're going to make a compost extract. And then we will introduce the microbes into your garden to bring it up to a fertility level that it will produce you abundant, nutritious food. And then like that first week, you're going to plan a menu for the last 3 weeks of this class. So week 15, 16, and 17, you are going to eat from the food that you produced in that garden. And you know, obviously I'm not going to let anybody starve to death, but I think this is one of the greatest teaching tools, so that when you go home, you actually have confidence to know that you can feed yourself, and the skill so that you can actually feed yourself. And if you can feed yourself, you can feed others. And then you're going to spend 17 weeks growing and harvesting hands-on. The last 3 weeks, you're going to eat 60 meals. Just, you know, I'm just basing that on, you know, 3 weeks, 3 meals a day. That comes out to 60 meals. And so that will be that menu that you make the first week. And then we plant what you want to grow. Week 5, which is pretty early in the program, we're going to have a class on the needs of society, because our society right now has a lot of needs. And then each student chooses a project that they want to do that they can serve society, and then they work on that for the rest of the course. And then, of course, I help them. We mentor you through that project, and then on graduation week, you will present that to a group of friends and family, so forth, and then report on the project. My student Jessica had an herb project. I have a picture of that. I'll show you in just a second. And then Tim, he did a Leaky Weir project. And Leaky Weirs are like a man-made beaver dam to help hydrate the land. And then, of course, through all of this, we do focus our texts and our information from original sources and the classics. So this is not based on prescriptive agriculture. It's not based on very much technology. It's not based on gadgets and gizmos that make life easier. It's based on original research from scientists and brilliant people of the past who were smart enough to record it and put it in a book. And now we have the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of giants in this information. So we're going to the next slide here, if I can figure out how to push this button. So this is what our classroom looks like. Most of the time you're here, we are in the gardens and we are observing, we are learning, we are growing, we are working with plants and soil and the microscopic bugs. We are making composts. We are making compost extracts. We are inoculating the soil. We are eating the food. We are harvesting. We are learning to package food. If you want to go home and start a market garden or go to farmer's market, we will talk about how to package things so that it arrives where you're taking it in a good condition. Student housing is basically camping out. I want you to focus on this child right here. Look at this person's smile. Think, if you're an older person, think back when you were 18, 19 years old, spending the summer in a sheep camp on a cool ranch in the foothills of the mountains of Nevada. Wouldn't that have been the coolest thing ever? So hopefully I helped somebody's dream come true. But yeah, we do have student housing. It's a little bit primitive, but it's safe. It's healthy, and yeah. I just wanted to point out these deserts. These are the 4 deserts in North America, and the Earth, the entire world, is losing the size of Pennsylvania every year to a phenomenon called desertification, which means land becomes desert. So the land was once productive, it once grew plants that animals would eat, and now it does not produce plants. And so that's a big chunk of land that we're losing every year. But with the things that we teach in this class, and well, the things we teach in this class are the opposite of desertification. We can take desert and we turn it into productive land. So just, I'm gonna get my cursor out here if you're looking at the screen. So I live about right here where this cursor is, in northeastern Nevada. And so for me to go to a good store that actually has things, the closest place to go, it's right up here in Idaho, in Twin Falls area. And that's like 2 hours away, 2.5 hours. I think it's a good 2.5 hours from where I live. And then the Salt Lake Valley of northern Utah, it's like right over here, about right here. And it's 3 hours from where I am. So the people who came last year to this course, it was Tim and Jessica, they were from the northern Utah area, the Salt Lake area. They were actually from the Ogden area, but to me, it's all the same thing. Okay, here we go. This is a list of the authors of the original works that this whole course is based on. So as you go through here, we see all kinds of people. This is a very diverse list. We have people from modern reductionist science. We have people from modern holistic science. We have people on here from the ancient sciences, from the beginning of science. We have historians on here who were brilliant, who taught us the cycles of the way humans, the way the cycles of humanity goes, you know. I mean, there's times of poverty and there's times of riches, there's times of famine, there's times of plenty. And all of that matters because it has to do with ecology and how we grow food. And so this is all within the curriculum. We have, I would say there's a big list. There's probably 10 or 15 people on here who are alive today, who are farming today. Mostly what they do, they are professional farmers, and they're involved in what we call the regenerative farming movement, which is what used to be called the organic movement. But in the 1980s, the Rodales, they realized that the word organic was going to be hijacked and stolen from the government, which it basically was when the United States Department of Agriculture decided that we needed to have a label on food that was organic. There needed to be a definition of what it was. And as soon as they did that, then all the big farms thought we can get twice as much for our food if it says organic. And so let's make it organic. And so they just jumped from one set of sprays to another set of sprays that was now certified organic. I don't think they were necessarily better. And there was an entire sector of agriculture who were the organic producers who completely disagreed with that. And so we had to call ourselves something. And so we went with the Rodale's definition of regenerative. So, which is interesting because the original Rodale, his name is Jerome Irving Rodale. He started, I mean, he made up the word organic as far as organic farming. I mean, the word obviously existed before, but to call a certain type of farming organic, he started that in the 1940s, 1941. And now, in the 1990s, 1990 is when the talks began, the debate began on with the USDA. How do we certify organic? What is this labeling going to be? And then in the late 90s, they made legislation, and then in 2002 is the law we have now, which stopped probably more than half of the really good organic producers from using the word organic. First of all, it was illegal to call it organic anymore, unless they certified, but we didn't want to certify because then it lowered our standards, because all these big farms jumping on the bandwagon, they weren't going to do the ecological farming that actually made a better food product. It was just a big gimmick. And so anyway, I'm going off on this. We don't have time for all this, but it's pretty fun. But this is a list of the people who are the original sources of where I based my curriculum for this entire whatever it is, my class. This is a picture of Tim with his Leaky Weir. He built, I forgot how many, I think he built 65 or 68 of these in the irrigation creek that comes down right past my house. This is just a creek that comes down off the mountain. All of this water is snow melt, and when all the snow melts away, this gets pretty small. But even last year and the year before, those were two of the worst drought years we've had in the West, and this creek never really dried up. So this is a very tiny dam, and he just built it out of rocks because there were rocks everywhere. If you had sticks, you could do that. If you have sod, you use that. But what this does is it hydrates the land. So for his class project of identifying a societal need, he thought, well, let's hydrate the land because the deserts are too dry, and if we hold the water back, more plants grow, and as more plants grow, it becomes a cascading, like a compounding positive effect on the whole ecosystem. And just within like 3 weeks of him building his first 10 or 15, we saw a difference of the grass getting greener further out. There were places where we measured about 10 feet out that were just sagebrush with hardly nothing growing, and green grass was growing out there, which was pretty awesome. So little tiny things we can do like this, it seems like they won't do anything, actually can have a gigantic effect on a lot of things, including the entire water cycle. And then this is Jessica, my other graduate, and she did a project on herbs. She has friends and family who like to use herbs for different things. And so we just took this picture for fun, just to show a whole bunch of the native things that are growing around the area. And I mean, you can see that there's a thistle in here, but it has medicinal value. There's the sunflowers, there's yarrow here, the vetch, there's a whole bunch of them. This is mullein. So there's a bunch of herbs that we just went out and picked. And she actually grew a bunch of herbs in pots for her project. And she gave a brilliant presentation at graduation about how this all worked out. This is a fantastic picture because this shows what we did. Instead of using herbicides or tillage to control weeds, and those are the two modern ways within the Green Revolution thinking, or conventional agriculture, it's all the same thing, or corporate agriculture. Those are 3 names for the same thing. But we use tillage and sprays like herbicides to kill weeds and to control weeds. Well, we controlled this weed. See how it's dying? We controlled this weed because we changed the ecological succession. There's another way to say that, if that was awkward. We changed the community dynamics of the plants and animals and microbes where this was growing, and so it died naturally. And these are the types of things that we know how to do, we meaning humanity. The knowledge is here, but it hasn't reached critical mass, and not very many people are talking about it. So it's like a brand new scientific breakthrough. It's like when Edison first made his light bulb, he knew it changed the world, but not everybody heard about a light bulb for another 20 or 30 years. I mean, there were places that were in darkness for a long time. And so wouldn't it be awesome to not put toxins on the land and to just be able to do other things because of our management that make the weeds die out? And the cool thing is the weeds don't even sprout in the springtime sometimes once you change succession properly. And then here's a picture of the greenhouse. This is during construction. And I just barely finished that floor right there. This is our classroom in the greenhouse. And of course, the pictures you've been seeing the last year or two, it looks like a jungle in there with all kinds of plants growing, but this is a fun picture to see. But we did build this for the purpose of creating a classroom space. And we were in there a full day, what, 4 weeks ago now? For boot camp. We spent a whole day in here doing all the hands-on portion, and it worked out fantastic. Here we are later on in the winter time. This is still the first year in the winter, growing with the row covers on top here. Now during the 17-week class, we're not in the winter time here, but we certainly do talk about how to grow throughout the winter. Plant diversity is one of the major things that we talk about in our 17-week course, but it's really diversity of all life. You have to have a lot of insects, a lot of birds, all kinds of bugs. See, for so long with the attitude of the Green Revolution, we had the belief and the idea that bugs were like a bad thing. Let's just spray everything and it'll kill all the bugs and then we won't have any problems. And that's what prompted Rachel Carson to write that book she wrote called Silent Spring, which is a pretty cool book. And sometimes we see that book today, or we hear about that, because she started the modern environmental movement. And sometimes we think about the environmental movement and we're thinking, oh yeah, it seems like a political thing. It seems like a left-wing thing. It seems kind of dumb or whatever. But when you go do the research on what was actually happening at the time that prompted her to write that book, there was serious pollution. And if you lived by those places that were putting out that kind of pollution, it would scare you to death today. Our world today is amazingly cleaner than it was then. I mean, there were places where there were lakes that had, and the entire lake was covered with film of motor oil, because when people would get done, like an old car would break down, they'd just sink them in the lakes, and it was crazy, and all the fish would die. So there were things that we wouldn't do today, even if we're against the modern environmental movement, because we think it's dumb or stupid, and all our conservative friends are saying how foolish it is. But at the time that she wrote that, I think it was brilliant and it was a good thing. But my point of saying that is that diversity is what keeps our food growing really well without purchasing all of the really expensive stuff, like lots of diesel fuel, lots of chemicals, the fertilizers. We don't need all of that stuff if we have enough bugs, because the bugs do an amazing amount of things for us. And of course, in our class, we learn how to use all the tools and the gizmos and the gadgets. You know, a minute ago, I said we didn't use many of those, and we don't, except for like 10 things. And the penetrometer is one of them. We look at roots. We do a lot of digging around and looking at roots to try to see what's in the soil. And here's more roots to look at. And I know we've talked about this in previous classes, so I'm not going to go into it. But in the 17-week course, we seriously get into this so that you know what you're doing when you get home. The use of cardboard and wood chips to block out weeds when you first start a garden is brilliant. If you look in the bottom right corner of this, I moved back the cardboard right here. I just peeled it back so you could see this green underneath. See, I didn't till this up. I didn't go to the work of doing that. I just slapped down some cardboard and dumped a bunch of 5-gallon buckets of wood chips on here. And then I planted the cabbages in here. See this little plant right there? And then right here, and right there, and right there, and those grow into beautiful cabbages. I picked those about 3 months later. Of course, this was winter time, so it took them a long time to grow. But there I am with a 27-pound cabbage. That was a hybrid cabbage. It's called Megaton, and I grew that the first year we had a crop in that greenhouse. It was one of the first things I planted, and so that was pretty awesome. And of course, the picture on the right is a picture of the greenhouse and the door where we walk in. And compost is one of the major things we learn in the 17-week course, because compost is one of our most fantastic tools to be able to change the succession of the soil. This is how we killed those weeds, is because we made a compost extract and then we inoculated the soil, and it moved it from an early succession to a mid succession, which means we had a balance of fungus and bacteria instead of mostly bacteria. And then those weeds just simply wouldn't grow anymore. Let's talk about plants reaching their genetic capacity. That is an alfalfa leaf, my friends. For those of you who have had pastures and animals and have seen alfalfa hay, you know that an alfalfa leaf is usually about the size of a dime, not the size of a quarter and a dime put together. This comes from my friend Josh Adams. He has hay fields in Idaho, Fillmore, Utah, different places. And he sent me this picture. And I love it because when you have fields that are functioning properly the way that we teach to do it, this is the kind of production you get. And it gets tall, it's healthy, it's beautiful. So here's just some more pictures about what we're doing on our farm. We do learn the microscope. We learn to work with each species of garden plant and how best to grow them, the propagation of seeds, and how to harvest, how to package, how to take things away, the soil tests. So these are the things that we do. And that is the end of my presentation about the 17-week course and what is happening when you come here and you take that class. There's probably a lot of things that I didn't talk about, but I think that was a pretty good overview. So I'm going to open this up for questions, and you can go ahead and you can type in the chat your question, or you can unmute and we can just talk. Hopefully you have some questions about your gardens. We can talk about it. Questions about anything, and I'll do my best to answer it. If I don't know the answer, I say I don't know, and that's one of the rules for my 17-week class. I don't want people telling me a bunch of stuff that they're just making up as they go. That is how we get in trouble in this world. If people don't know things, we should say, I don't know. Boot camp is coming up April 27, 28, 29. I already have one family signed up. If you want to come to this event, you need to figure out your schedule and sign up. The way that you're signed up is you pay me, and then you're signed up. So I have room for about 7-8 more people for this event. And I did have a question. I'm going to go ahead and answer a question that I got recently. And it's about the price here for the 17-week course. Because I have 2 options for the 17-week class. Now, it is a course designed for people to come here, but some people can't come here. Most adults with lives and jobs and careers and families simply couldn't come here for 17 weeks. It wouldn't work for the schedule. So I do have an online option, and we would fit you into a Zoom call during the classes, and we would have you involved in the mentoring. The hands-on work, you would do at your own home, in your own garden, in your own greenhouse. So the question I had recently was, why is the price the same, whether you're online or whether you are on site? And here is why. The class is $3,500. But the people who come here are doing a lot of work for me while they are here. And they're not working in their own garden at home, adding value. They're adding value to my operation and what I'm trying to accomplish. And they're helping us to grow food and to make this a better place for future students and for us while we're here. So I think that that is valuable. So instead of having the price being $7,000 to come here for 17 weeks, which would be a comparable price for that long to be here, to live here, to have housing and to have food and everything, I just priced it the same for the online students and for the students who are here on site. So in a way, one way of thinking about it is the on-site students get a discount, sort of. So that answers that question. Let me go ahead and stop my screen sharing so that I can see everybody here. So go ahead and ask your questions tonight.
All right, Holly has a question. She's right over here.
Okay.
So, we're working on getting our dryland pasture seed so that we can put some out so that hopefully when the ground thaws, it'll start germinating. So we found one, we contacted Utah Seed and talked to Emily, and she said she has a 7 to 8 species mix for dry land pasture, which is what ours would be. And then we found out about a company that is a seed co-op that does landrace seeds for our valley where we have our property. And so we went to one of their retailers today, and they have a 4 species mix for their dry land pasture. Now, in the previous online, you had suggested you needed more like 12 to 14 species to really get going on that. So do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, did they happen to tell you what the species are?
Yeah.
You have that in front of you?
There were a couple of wheat grasses, and then there was
I don't have the notes.
I don't remember
Oops.
what the other one was. But I thought it was interesting that 2 were wheat and then the other 2 were something else, rather than having a wheat and a something else and a something else and a something else. So if 2 of them are wheat, even though they're different species of wheat, does that count as separate species, or do you want to try to get wider variety?
So yeah, this is a 2-hour class. Let me do it in 2 minutes. You want to focus on 4 plant families.
Okay.
Okay. So any grass, and there's hundreds of species of grass.
Okay.
There could be thousands, or if you go worldwide, but there's hundreds of species, but they're all the same plant family. They're all grass.
Okay.
Okay. So one of those things from that dryland mix from Utah Seed, it was probably called crested wheatgrass. Was that the name of one of them?
I don't remember.
Yeah, so crested wheatgrass is pretty common for the Western US. And yeah, so it's a grass. So what you're going to be looking for is other things that are not a grass. So yeah, you could plant, 3, 5, 10 different species of grass, and that's good. The diversity of those species is good. In fact, it's great. You also want to get other broadleafs in there so that you can get 3 other plant families growing. And when you get this planted, if a bunch of weeds start coming up with it, that's a good thing at first because it's giving you more diversity. And then weeds can be dealt with and controlled later on, because once you get your soils inoculated and everything else, a lot of those early succession species are going to die out. So if you see things like lamb's quarters and red root amaranth starting to grow, even morning glory, things, there's that plantain, people seem to hate it, but these are all good plants. If a plant will grow where you now have bare ground, that is fantastic. So over the course of 5 to 8 years, you can manage this piece of land so that those early succession undesirable species will simply stop growing, because you're going to change the soil so that the species you do want will grow and thrive. Okay. So you're probably going to want a legume in there. That's a plant family. That means clover, alfalfa, vetch. Those are all legumes. So some of those would be a good thing. Anyway, you can, a simple thing to do is you go to Google and you type up plant family chart, and there'll be 5,000 websites trying to show you charts of plant families. And then you get your list of your seed mix, and you look up on that chart to see which plant families, and then you can kind of know. Here's what I would do. So you have your species mix that had 7 or 8 different types, and then from your other company it had 4 types. You might just want to get both of them and mix them up and plant them.
See, there you go.
That's what I told Ron. I
Yeah.
said we gotta get some from both and just throw it all out there.
Yeah, do that.
Then Holly had another question about planting fruit trees and what to do in between them. Is that the question, Holly?
Oh, that was I was wondering if we want to start putting fruit trees in. If we have, these various pasture things, plants out there, just trying to get the soil going, because we have pretty sad soil, I think. Then when we plant fruit trees, do we just kind of dig a hole just big enough to put the tree in the ground, or do you have to clear it a little bit so it doesn't choke out the sapling? Or
so yeah, pretty much just dig your hole, get your tree in there, make sure you water it in good, and then you want to put on 4 to 6 inches of wood chips all around that tree. Maybe not so much up the trunk, because little pests can live in the wood chips and then they chew on the bark of the trunk, but all around the root zone. So if you have a small sapling that's say 5 feet high or 3 to 5 feet high, then I would put a ring of wood chips about 4 feet from the trunk of the tree out. So that would be like so the whole way across is going to be 8 feet across. So it's quite a bit of wood chips, but you want to do that because trees like more fungus, and the wood chips is going to be a fungal food source for trees. If you just have the trees in a bare soil, they tend to struggle. Now we see a lot of the commercial orchards that go along with the green revolution mentality, and they are growing trees and it's completely bare. And the reason they make that work is they have an arsenal of all kinds of sprays and fertilizers and soil amendments that those trees will grow because they can create those conditions. But that's not really a good idea, because you're not going to have a functioning soil. So what you want to do is you're going to plant between your rows of trees, you're gonna be planting kind of a pasture mix, all kinds of wildflowers. In fact, that's a good thing to do for your pasture mix too. If you went to tell your, I think Utah Seed, I think they have a honeybee flower mix.
No. No.
Mix that with your pasture mix. Just ask them, just say, are there any noxious species in here that the local people will think are weeds? Because sometimes there are.
Okay.
So just, do a little bit of due diligence and research on that and find out. But yeah, that's how you could get up to 15 to 20 species, is by planting honeybee pollinating mixes. Some places sell honeybee mixes, some people sell butterfly mixes, some people sell hummingbird mixes. So that's 3 different flower mixes that you can put out there, and it's getting a massive amount of plant diversity, which will bring in a large amount of microbial diversity, which will create a functioning soil for you.
Great.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Okay, where's our next question? Marianne, do you have a question? John Fisher, Clint. Nobody has to ask a question, and I'm not going to force you to.
Hey, there we are. This is a dumb question. Okay, in Missouri, we have a lawn that was dug up because they had to put in a sump pump, and it's never grown right. In fact, there's not lawn, it's just dirt. And is there something that we could put there to make it look decent? And maybe even kind of get rid of the lawn, but still look pleasing to the neighborhood. It's not an HOA, of course, it's Missouri. And so what would you suggest? And then there's areas that we've dug up because they were weeds, little did we know. And I'd like to put something in those places where the weeds are growing. And so what would you suggest?
Okay, if you want to kill out the grass where your weeds are, if you want to kill it out, put down cardboard, put 4 inches of good mulch on there, like wood chips or finished compost, and then plant your plants in it. Plant your flowers. On the bare ground that's already bare ground, just cover it with a mulch of wood chips. Unless you don't like the aesthetics of wood chips.
Yeah.
I think they look good.
William, it's in the middle of the lawn. So we've got all these bare spots, in the middle of the lawn, where nothing seems to be growing, or maybe weeds.
Do you want the grass to grow back? You can get the grass to grow back if that's what you want.
I'm just thinking it'd be nice if we had dichondra for the whole lawn. You know what dichondra is, right? You don't have to mow them.
Okay, all right. Okay, Melanie, I'm gonna tease you. You ready?
Yeah.
We've known each other for enough decades, I can tease you. What you do is you get a backhoe in there and you dig a gigantic hole and you put in a huge pine tree.
And let it take over. I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out what can be planted in bare areas that would grow and fill in and kind of overtake the grass eventually, so that you didn't have to mow it all the time and it didn't look dumb. I mean, why do we have to have grass anyway?
What you
Why
need
do
is
people have
morning
this
glory. You just need a whole bunch of, you need a lot of hedge bindweed and morning glory in there. It will grow there. Go somewhere where somebody has a morning glory problem, dig up a bunch of them and put them in there. In a year, it will be a great ground cover and it'll cover that bare spot. It's an early succession plant, totally cover it.
I wonder what the neighbors would think.
It doesn't matter what the neighbors think.
It would be pretty when they're in bloom.
And I'm not kidding about that, actually. And if you ever want to get rid of the morning glory, just cover it with lots of cardboard and it'll smother it out. But you need to put early succession plants there. The reason the grass isn't growing back is because all the microbes died. The only thing in there is bacteria. You don't have any of the higher predators in the microbe world, meaning you don't have the protozoa group and you don't have the nematodes, you don't have microarthropods. So if you want the grass to grow, you need to get some compost on there so that you restore those microbes so that it's a mid-succession, because grass grows good in a mid-succession. If you want to do it without doing that, then let nature do it by planting a bunch of weeds. You need to get a bunch of, if you want a low growing one, then you're gonna need something like morning glory. It's really the only one. If you want tall ones, you could get a bunch of lamb's quarters. You can buy all these weeds on Amazon. It's amazing. There's tons of weeds seeds that are like, weeds are outlawed all over the place. There's restrictions in counties all over the United States. You can't grow them, but you can go to Amazon and buy seed for any of this stuff. So it's pretty funny. So if you want Mother Nature to do it, introduce the seeds that are the early succession, and they'll take off and grow like crazy there.
And you gave us a list of those early succession plants when we were talking about creating the environment for growing food, right? The very beginning.
Yeah,
a whole list of things, didn't you?
Yeah, go back in your notes. You got those.
Okay. That's what we need to do.
Here's the other thing. If you want to plant it to grass, go to the local feed store and buy fescue. The local farm stores, they will have grass seed. Fescue is an early succession grass. It will grow in bacterial dominant soils. It'll grow where no other grass will grow. So if you just want to seed it down to grass, put down fescue grass and keep it watered until it gets established, which means about 10 weeks.
That's a really good idea. And how do we get rid of quackgrass then that we don't, well, other people don't like it and it doesn't really look good in your grass? So how do you get rid of quackgrass? Plant more fescue?
Get rid of quack grass in where you already have grass, like in a lawn.
In your lawn. Yeah, yeah.
You don't.
Well, no,
You just mow it and have a
have a
beautiful
lawn and we
lawn.
have these holes everywhere in our yard. Awful. Yeah. Just keep it, you think?
Yeah, just keep it. It's good. You need diversity. You need all kinds of grass growing out there. There's nothing wrong with quack grass. The only reason people don't like quack grass is they were trained by the Green Revolution that we're supposed to have monocrops. And that's why our ecosystems are failing, is we don't have enough diversity. Don't get rid of it. Keep it. It's a good plant. If you had enough quack grass out there in your
we
lawn,
wouldn't have a problem.
if you had enough of it by that dead spot, it would have already taken over, because quack grass is an early succession too.
Okay.
So we'll try fescue, I think.
Yeah, try fescue. That's the one. Okay, Clint had a question. Clint, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Okay, I was just thinking about your cardboard situation, and I was wondering if you're picky with your cardboard. Do you like try to get the just brown stuff, or do you not use the stuff with writing and the dyes? Because I don't know what's in it.
Yeah, so there maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was a lot of publications out there saying that cardboard that was glossy and had all the printing on it, and like it's white, and so they printed all that stuff on there. They said that was really bad and it was toxic and blah blah blah, and they went on and on about that. And it's part of the environmental movement that I really hate, because I don't think any of it was true. Here's the deal about cardboard. all of those inks that they use, we should never say all. 99.9999% of the inks that they use on cardboards are made from soybeans, and they are biodegradable. And so if you use those cardboards, the microbes are just gonna biodegrade it down. So the simple answer is no, I don't worry about what kind of cardboard. And the other thing is about cardboard, it's really easy to find enough cardboard that doesn't have ink all over it. Like if you go somewhere to get cardboard, usually it's just the brown cardboard. Like the Amazon box that it has the black ink on it. Don't worry about that. It's gonna decompose fine. I've never seen a soil sample, because I've composted a lot of cardboards, right? And have never seen it hurting my microbial counts when I'm using it. So
Gotcha.
it's just decomposing. I don't think it's toxic at all.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You bet.
That's all I got today.
Okay, cool, Clint. Thanks for being on.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, Vernie.
Hey,
Oh, go ahead. Who said that?
Sorry, it's John. Hey, so can we use cardboard in our compost?
Absolutely. Cardboard is a fungal food. It's a brown component. Remember, compost has 3 components. It has browns, greens, and high nitrogens. Cardboard is a brown component. So you're going to want 60% browns. It's fantastic. I use it all the time.
You cut it up then, William?
No, I mean, if you want to manage it that way, no. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, whatever.
A little bit.
If you have a small compost pile and you feel like it's too big, go ahead. It's too much work to cut it up. Just get it wet. It'll disintegrate really fast. You don't have to go to the trouble to cut it up.
Okay.
Okay, we just have enough time for 1 or 2 more questions. Marianne or Vernie, you haven't said anything. I want to give you the opportunity before we close this out. You certainly don't have to talk.
I can't think of a particular question. I'm just excited about the boot camp coming up. I'm excited that there will be children there. We always have children at the boot camp, but it's going to be fun to have somebody besides, our friends' littles or the Sorensens' littles, because there's always kids at the boot camp. So this is kind of fun that families are now bringing their kids. I think it's going to be a great experience.
Yeah, and this boot camp coming up, it is focused on families. So if you know anybody, or if you want to come and you have small people, we're gonna be doing things to help encourage children and teenagers to learn all of these fantastic things. And we're gonna be out there in the garden getting dirty. It's gonna be so much fun.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great.
All right. So I think we'll go ahead and close this down unless Mary has something to say. If not, that's totally fine. And we will see you next week. I will be back next week. I don't know what our subject will be next week. I kind of thought maybe I would go over one of the charts that we teach in our class about how people view agriculture and how that affects the confusion that people have when we go shopping at the grocery store. So that was in my mind, but I'll give it some thought this week. If you have a subject you'd like me to talk about, you can always shoot me an email, and my contact info is at georgicrevolution.com, which is my website. So you can contact me there. So good night. Thank you for participating, and we will see you next week.
Right, thanks. Goodbye.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You are all welcome.